You're listening to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please join us on Patreon.
Hello, and welcome back to Paris Underground Radio's The Heart of You. My name is Annette Deleu. Today is episode 42. I am interviewing Su Burnett, who is an internationally renowned horse whisperer and animal communicator. I am so excited to have her on the show today because I can't tell you how many times I have sat around with my cat, because I've always had a cat my whole life. And I look at him and I say, I just wish we had one day where I could understand you and you could understand me and we could ask each other the questions that we want to ask. And with Su, this is absolutely possible. Su, I want to welcome you to the show.
Hi, Annette. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited about this episode because animals are so near and dear to my heart and I love them so much. And I just wish I knew more about what they want to tell us. So can you start by just kind of telling our audience how you learned how to communicate with animals and how you discovered that this is something you could do?
Well, I never really realized I could do it. I just always could do it. And it was
incredible.
Kind of weird kid. I realized once I got to kindergarten that I was really strange. So I just tried to mimic the other kids and be like them. And I'm an artist, and I took an art degree to teach art education. But that job kind of never totally worked. I grew up in Hong Kong and I was working in Canada, and I just really wanted to go back home. And before I did, I had been offered a psychic job at a store, which I did because I could do it, but I didn't really enjoy predicting people's futures. Who was I to say, be careful on the stairs in January? Like, did I plant that seed or was that really going to happen? I was really kind of uncomfortable with that job. So I went back to Hong Kong to teach English, and I was on the beach in February, and it was just gorgeously warm. And this dog went running by me and he said, "Hey, you can talk to me." And I was like, yeah. And he was like, "Oh, you got to tell my owner about the shampoo. I'm so itchy." And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't think I will, because this is a very small island and I'm going to be normal now and I'm going to get a normal job and nobody's going to know what I can do." He was so itchy that he sent me the itch in my body, and it was head to toe itch. So I somehow approached his owner, and he said he's got to stop using the green shampoo. So I told the owner this, and the owner said, "No, we don't use any green shampoo." So I glared at the dog, and I was like, "Oh, you've blown my cover. I have to move to Japan." And every time I saw this guy, I would jump into his storefront sideways. And he finally caught up with me about 3 weeks later. And he said, "We got home from work yesterday and our helper was washing the dogs. And she takes them to the beach 3 times a day and gives them like a shower after each time. And she was using green washing up liquid. And so it was really drying out the poor dog's coat. And he worked for the SPCA. So the next thing I knew, I was a professional animal communicator. But I had really no idea how to do it as a business, or
right.
If dogs come see you, do you need insurance? Or yeah, it was a little bit much for me. And I was still like, well, I'll do this for a bit till I can get this English language job. And a dog came one day, a schnauzer, and he was with 2 humans, and he had a real problem with his digestive system. And he really wanted me to leave the humans in the house and take them out for a walk so he could eat some grass, because Hong Kong Island, there's no grass. And where I lived on this fishing island, there was some grass available. And his humans didn't know what he ate, when he ate, nothing. It was really strange.
So you were asking them questions
Yeah.
before you were going to communicate with him?
Well, what I do is they tell me kind of why they're there. And then to get more info, I ask the humans questions so that I know what questions to ask the dog.
Okay, got it.
They didn't know anything. So I finally took the dog out, left the humans outside on my terrace. And I said to the dog, "This is really weird. They don't know anything about you." And he said, "Yeah, I've never met them before. Be careful." I met them at my dad's office, and then they brought me on the ferry to see you. So I got back to the house, and I was like, "I don't know what's going on here, but you don't know anything about him. And he says he's never met you before today." And the lady looked really shocked, and the man was really, really shocked. And they were there from a Chinese magazine to prove that I was a con.
No.
And they had a camera in their bag. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was so funny but weird. And I proved I wasn't a con. So
yeah,
I was in a magazine on the cover that had like a readership of like 2.5 million or something. And part of me was like, oh, I still want that normal job, like. Then I got on the newspaper, and I just got super famous for doing what I did. It was pretty cool and amazing, and really, there's no school to go to or anything. So I had to really learn how to do my job by doing it.
Yeah.
I finally came back to Canada, and I was like, I'm getting that teaching job, that art teaching job. I want a regular paycheck, and I just want like kind of a quote unquote normal job. And I was here for about a month, and I thought, when I was in Hong Kong, I was really kind of scared of the horses. I've never worked with horses or been around them. So I thought I'll go take a riding lesson, and then I'll be more comfortable around them physically. So I walked in for the lesson, and I was learning how to brush the horse. And there was a horse calling to me going, just swearing her head off and saying, you have to tell her like it was her fault and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm here for a riding lesson. Like,
right.
say to this lady, like, yeah, the horse in the corner there is like really upset with you. But she was so insistent and bossy that I finally did have to say, this is what I do. And that horse over there is really upset with you. And they had been in a show, and they had fallen, and they needed to kind of work out who was at fault or what went down. Yeah, that horse was named Agent Scully, and she just decided I was hers, and she was going to train me. And we were on magazines and TV together, and it just all went again.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, when you're talking about speaking to dogs versus horses versus cats, various different animals, is there a different quality to the messages that you get based on the type of animal you're speaking to? Or is it all kind of the same?
The word quality, I think horses are a bit different because they don't live with us. And most of the horses I talk to are athletes. They're involved with a sport. So what they want to discuss is quite different than a dog.
I see. Okay, got it.
Like they would want to talk about where they're sore, or their saddle, or their bit, or a lot of horses are like, these people are driving a long distance to the show, and I think they're leaning on the console because their shoulder and arm is crooked now. and they're giving me different instructions with their body than they think they are.
Oh, interesting.
When you come off the jump, there's a problem. So get them to uncross their legs, please.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then dogs just always want to tell us how much they love us. They really want to talk about their food a lot, allergies. They live with us, so there's a lot of environmental factors that affect them. You know, like stop using that really smelly stuff in the laundry. Cats are really funny because they're like, move that thing off the top shelf so I can get up there. You know.
Well, they do that themselves sometimes, right? I mean,
Yeah, they'll do it for us, but they're like, I can tell I'm upsetting you, so maybe this time I'll tell you. You know?
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of different types of animals have different things they want to discuss. And, you know, I'm lucky because the way that I do a call is I just don't get any information at all. And then I really trust what I receive. But I also have clients prepare questions beforehand so that I have questions to ask the animal. And those are often like based on their health or their behavior, or, you know, with dogs, it's a lot of life ending decisions. Are they ready to go?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Which that's always the hardest decision.
Yeah. Usually the animal tells people like, you'll know, you'll know, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also read that you had spent several months in Thailand healing elephants and doing that sort of work. And so is it very similar type of work that you would do with the horses, or was that different?
Thailand, that trip was, I always really wanted to spend time with elephants. So I went to a really wonderful rescue place in Chiang Mai. And I think it was one of the most difficult trips I've ever had because the way that they train elephants is just devastating. It was a really difficult trip emotionally for me. And being around them was really extraordinary for me, but very emotionally. In my job, unfortunately, I do often have to hear about the very worst actions of humans towards animals. And there was one elephant, she had had such a remarkable life and really old, but they had rescued her, but she was not drinking at all. And I wasn't telling anybody what I could do there because often people think I can read their mind, or, you know, people treat me very differently once they know what I can do. And it's kind of lonely. So I hadn't really told anybody, but this group took me over to meet the elephant and I was so thrilled. And I kept saying to her, you have to drink some water. And she kept looking at the hose, but finally she said, it's a snake.
Oh.
And it was all kind of, you know, how, like it would look like an S. So I just went over and kind of pulled the hose and straightened it out. And then everybody, like whoever was holding the hose, she did drink from it. And it was like a miracle thing, but it was so, like, the hose looked like a snake to her.
Oh my gosh, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was really a tough trip, that one.
I love Paris for all of its myriad of options of things to do throughout each and every day. However, it can get a little overwhelming sometimes to figure out what you want to do because there's so much to do. If you're in this position, I highly recommend you listen to Don't Miss This with Jennifer Garrity. She gives you the best of what is going on in Paris for each particular week. It is definitely something I listen to every Sunday, so go and check it out at parisundergroundradio.com.
We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio. What can people do? Because I know I'm always in that space of whenever I see injustice with animals or anything like that. I mean, one of the things here in France that will soon hopefully be eradicated is that they have these really awful, like traveling circuses with animals and things like that. And it just breaks my heart every time I see one. So, like, what is it that we can do just from your experience? Like, what can people do to help with the benefits or well-being of these animals that are getting mistreated?
I don't really know. My job is really to help people understand what happened in animals past so that it often explains like a weird behavior reaction that they have now.
Okay.
But I'm not to do my job effectively and stay not depressed. I have to really focus on what's happening now with them.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's funny because one of the things that I wanted to do when I was very little was I wanted to work with animals and I wanted to become a vet. And then once I realized that I would have to put animals down or that I would have to experience losing multiple animals while being a vet, I basically said there was no way I could do that. Like I could not be in that space. So I went through my studies as a designer and things like that. So that was my initial career path. And it's interesting because when you talk about talking to the animals and sort of figuring out where they have been and what they're sort of working through, I've often wondered since I do work in the Akashic Records, I've often wondered if, I could read the Akashic Records for Lucius, for my cat, or for, other pets I've had in the past. And it's funny because I have asked Lucius and he's told me no. So he doesn't want me to look into his previous lifetimes, even though I do know that the soul that he is now was definitely my previous cat as well. So he's been with me several times throughout my lifetime. So that I do know, but he's very tight-lipped about what he's working on as a soul and that type of thing. So do they give you that sort of information or not always?
I feel like animals really are here to really, like cats especially, like focus on the now, like we get stuck in the past or we try to explain things from the past all the time. We kind of get stuck back there. Many animals do say like they've been with us several times throughout lifetimes. That's why we just feel we know them, like they're familiar. And they often have chosen us somehow to like be with us again. I feel like your cat might be saying like it's none of your business.
Right. That's exactly the energy that I felt.
Yeah, and cats really have that. They're, they really are. Like the thing they tell me the most is when I'm, some days I have a slow day or like after the hurricane on Saturday, I had to talk to a cat and she was just like, "You're so slow today." And
to you.
yeah. And they often say to me, like, "You're just a mere human." When I want to know something like that I don't understand about cats, which is a lot, they often say to me, "Yeah, you're a mere human. Like, you'll never understand." So, yeah. And it might be different, like with a dog but I think Lucius is like, "Yeah, this is my history and it's my business."
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what I felt. It is funny though, because there are certain things that I do know about him because of the fact that I had him in, a previous cat body and, that same soul. So there are certain things that I do know about him and things that I've kind of observed that he's working on or, his personality and that sort of thing. Out of all of the experiences that you've had, now you've already told us some of the really profound experiences that you've had that have changed the course of your life. And I just want to point out how amazingly synchronistic it was that the dog that approached you on the beach happened to be connected to a human that was part of the SPCA. Like it's crazy that, I mean, that's such an incredible synchronicity, right? When you have gone through all of these particular situations where the universe was clearly pushing you to do this work because this is exactly where your talents lie, can you give us a couple of stories of maybe the most near and dear to your heart, or some experiences that you've had with particular animals that it's been super fulfilling to be able to help them either physically or emotionally?
I'm just so fortunate because I've gotten to do this job for 20 years. So I just get to help people and animals every day, which is a really fulfilling thing. And then at the same time, it's a weird job.
Not in my world. In my world, I don't think it's a weird job at all. I think it is a very necessary job, quite frankly.
Yeah,
Because if more people could be able to understand what their pets or their animals are trying to tell them, it would be such a beautiful connection between them.
it's true. I guess it's just like I love my job, but then it makes me weird to other people in daily life.
Sure.
They don't quite, understand. But I think last January, I have a really lovely old client from New York that I've had for a client since 2010. And she messaged me that her little lovely cute dog, Penny, was at the vet and she had eaten rat poison.
Oh, no.
We had a call immediately, but the vet had really said, we pretty much have to put her down because it's such an awful death. And we had the call, and the lady, little Penny, was like, yeah, I feel bad. Is there any hope? The client was saying, the vet is saying, no, there's no hope at all. So we have to wait for the vet to call and then go in and tell them to put her down. And little Penny was like, I only licked it. Like, I didn't really swallow that much. And is there any hope? And yeah, it was just a terrible situation. So she had to hang up because the vet called, and they went in, and I went in. I didn't know what to do. So I started talking to Penny, and I said, listen, can I help you, sweetie? What can I do for you? And she said, well, I want to be a miracle dog. How do I do that? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know what to do here for you. So I just kind of felt like I was petting her, or loving her, or holding her. And I said to her, if you need to leave, there'll be help and everything. So you do what you feel is best. And she kept saying to me, I want to be a miracle dog. So I kept writing to the lady, and she kept saying, like, it was getting worse. Every message was like, there's no hope. This is getting worse. And they finally got in to see her. It was COVID. They had taken to her vet. They didn't know. They finally got in to see her. She was pretty poorly, but she kind of was a little better. And she kept saying to me, please write to her and tell her I'm going to be a miracle dog. So I did, and it went on for a day. And then they left, finally, the vets. And halfway home, the vet called them and said, can you come back in? Because she's a miracle dog. She's somehow completely recovered.
No.
And when I got to talk to that lovely client afterwards, she just kept saying to me, with every message, you were giving me hope. And the word miracle just kept giving us more hope. and she's fully recovered now. Like, she's fine.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, she's the cutest little thing. Yeah.
Now, do you think that Penny knew that she would recover? Did she know, or was it just her sheer will of being able to sort of heal herself?
I don't think she knew, but I think when the vet, I'm not a vet, but A, she ate the rat poison, B, like, they're going through the list, right? So I can tap into like their feeling or their personality. And she was giving me descriptions like I only licked it, I didn't swallow it. Or if I swallowed it, it was like a really trace amount. So she felt it wasn't quite as serious as everybody was saying it was.
Got it. Okay. So she was clarifying for you.
Yes, that's a
Okay.
great part of my job. Like, especially with the horses, they can tell me where they're sore or maybe what happened to cause that soreness.
I'm going to ask you how people can more effectively communicate with their pets. So, for example, with Lucius, I think one of my biggest anxieties that I have is that I do travel often. Obviously, during COVID, wasn't traveling a lot. So there was a good couple years there where, he was with me every day, and it was lovely to have him be in my space all the time during that time. But then, of course, my family is back in the United States. And so I do travel. And when I do, I travel for, a long period of time. So maybe 3 weeks or a month or something like that. So just recently I was in the United States to renew my visa to stay here in France. And the biggest anxiety I had was the fact that, Lucius was here by himself, because the one thing that I have realized is when I do travel, he doesn't necessarily like people to stay here in the apartment. He prefers somebody to come in, feed him, and then leave. Because when I have had people stay here, with the exception of my friend in Chicago, but when I have had people stay there, he gets really anxious and he doesn't like it. So I have some neighbors here that I think he does tolerate, maybe kind of like, but he's just getting used to them. It takes him a while to get used to people. So how can I communicate with him to find out what exactly he wants, how he feels when I'm gone, those types of things?
I guess that would be when you would call me.
Okay.
But
that makes sense. Yeah.
it's so funny. Lucius is just chatting away. He's like, yeah, humans are weird, He really appreciates humans, but it's his flat. That's his flat.
Yeah.
And he's very subtle. So if they sit on his couch, like, what are they doing? And, that's his. So he's saying that when you went away, he understood that you were anxious and upset about leaving him. And he was trying to reassure you that it would be like his holiday, like that he could just kind of relax and have the flat to himself.
Oh, that's so funny.
And that he really trusts that you always do your best for him, so that you are really going to try your best to find the right person to come, feed him and
right.
make sure that he knew somebody was coming to check on him. But there was great lengths of time where he just stretched out in the sun, and, you move around a lot and you're quite busy. So it was kind of nice to have the flat to himself.
That's really good to know.
And if you're
that's
going
really amazing to know.
away, they really like to be told in sleeps. That's a good way to measure time for them.
Oh, okay.
So you can tell them how many sleeps you're going to be away.
Well, how many of my sleeps or his sleeps? Because obviously he has more sleeps during the day.
You would go by night, like how many nights you're going to be gone.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And he's saying when you go away, he does miss you because he loves you immensely and you're such a wonderful person and you're part cat. So he really loves you, but it's also good to have like the whole place to himself, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. That's so good to know.
Yeah. And I think that's the really great benefit of my job is being able to assure people, or a lot of people call and they feel very guilty about things.
Are you trying to manifest your dream of moving to Paris? If you are, I would highly recommend listening to the Paris Estate of Mind podcast. It is right here on Paris Underground Radio, and it will give you everything that you need to know about renting apartments in the City of Light.
We will be right back with the Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to the Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio.
The animal's perspective is often just so reassuring, you know. I always know I've done my job when I hear that sound on the phone. Like, it's that release that people are okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and it's so interesting that you mentioned the couch in terms of Lucius, because when I moved here to France, it was July of 2019, and we were bouncing around for a few months before I got my permanent apartment, before all my stuff arrived from Chicago. And so when I finally got this flat and the furniture arrived, the second the couch arrived into the apartment, he immediately jumped on the couch and he's like, "Oh, I'm home now. Okay, so now my stuff is arriving. So now I know that this is home." Like the second he noticed the couch, like that was it, and he was fine.
Yeah, that's his couch.
Yeah.
He shares it with you, and he says he's quite generous about it.
He
Yeah, he's funny. He's very handsome. He also has a very good sense of humor.
He does.
Yeah, he's interesting. He is wondering do you have a terrace or something, or like a little metal balcony?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And is he allowed out there?
I tried to allow him to go out there a little bit. I'm on the 11th floor. And so I tried to put a harness on him to let him out on the balcony because obviously I want him to be safe. And he hates the harness. Hates it.
He's wondering if he could somehow put like netting. Like he's showing me that it's almost like metal out there or something. And
it is.
he's wondering if he could like have some kind of like netting or mesh or something that would, like, he's just sort of, I don't know what the right term would be visually, but he's just shaking his head like he's a cat, you know, like the harness thing. Like, obviously he's doing all of that to make you feel better, but honestly, he's a cat. So to make you feel better, you could put some netting around that or something so that he could get out there because it's so nice.
Okay.
And he doesn't really want to be an outdoor cat, although I think some days he's really curious about what you see, and he wouldn't mind like a backpack he could get in, or, you know, those bubble backpacks they make for cats. I think he would really enjoy that. And then he would really be delighted because he would be admired out there, but also get his picture, which he would really love.
Oh, that's incredible.
But I think he's really quite wanting to get out there and that. Like,
okay,
if you could kind of rig up something for your own well-being, you could even put netting, like make it into some kind of box thing for him. But he would really like to get out a bit more. Yeah, and for talking to them, really approach it like a language. Because if we break down how we communicate, we speak, and then we listen, and we pause and understand, and then we respond. And I've been doing this for years and years, so I am super quick, because I practice every day. For people who don't do it every day, keep it really simple. So you want to ask Lucius yes or no questions.
Okay.
And the reason for that is if, like the meaning of life. He could probably maybe tell you, but whether you would be able to hear it all and understand it is very different.
Sure.
You're developing your sending skills, but also your receiving and understanding skills. You would want to ask like really simple questions in the beginning and really yes or no, like not what do you need? Because he might be like, well, we need a new couch, or I need to have this whole area renovated on this terrace so I can get out there. We need a catio.
Right.
You might not be able to get all of that. So it's easier to ask like really simple questions in the beginning and be really patient with yourself, because sometimes the animal, they might just not want to talk. They might not know the answer. We might be like, have lists going on in our head and there's no room for the messages they're sending us. So be really patient and then really practice. And our intuition is just so helpful. And we're using our intuition to talk with them or receive the information that they're sending us. So to start off, our intuition, we use our 5 senses. And it's good to find out which sense you really work well with. So for me, I'm an artist, so I really get things visually. So the animals send me a lot of flashes of pictures, movies, impressions. Some people are super musical or do well with sound, so they tend to hear more just like a word or a sentence. And they often hear it in their own voice, but it's like sound-based. So it's good to figure out which sense you're really kind of more prone to use and then tap into that. And then the 6th sense is just knowingness. And we just know something. But as soon as we start to analyze it logically, it just disperses. It doesn't make any sense.
It's very similar for me when I'm reading somebody's past lives or tapping into their guidance or whatever it happens to be when I'm doing a session. And so I'll see movies going on behind my eyes. I will see various different images or symbols or things like that. I will also hear words. I'll hear different things. So I often tell people when they're trying to develop their gifts that they really need to sort of identify exactly what you were saying. So their dominant clair, so to speak. So is it clairvoyance? Is it clairsentience? Is it clairaudience? Figuring out where their dominant clair is can kind of help them understand what they need to tap into, which sense they need to tap into in order to receive the messages. I have tried this with Lucius or, with other animals to see if I could try to get those impressions or to see if I could try to communicate. And it for some reason, like I'm feeling like it's not the right frequency, if that makes sense. So do you find that it is a different frequency between communicating with pets and communicating with humans in that way? It's almost like turning the dial on a radio station to the right frequency, or is it something else?
I feel like you are doing it, but our expectations I feel like it would be your expectations. And when we receive information from them, especially in the beginning, it can be quite puzzling. And so it's very similar, I feel, to a language. Like when you start, like in French, you would learn like, hello, how are you? Right? But if somebody responds like in a like paragraph, you're like, I don't know. What was that? Like Lucius says that he sends you stuff, but you think too much about it.
Oh, okay.
Like you're thinking too much. And the understanding part, you have to kind of develop that. And it may not make sense to you when you receive it. So he might send you like to your question about something like an orange. And you're like, orange, what does that mean? And According to Lucius, you go way back in the filing system in your head to find out what orange means, right? And he's just shrugging. It's like, yeah, like have an orange. That's what I mean. It's so simple. Or like, you really need some vitamin C. It's really simple, but we tend to really refer to the past to understand the present. The animals often say to me, like, who are you today? Be who you are today. Who are you today? And Lucius is like, do that with when you communicate, like, what's going on today? Don't go so far in the past to explain what he's saying now, if that makes sense.
Okay, got it.
Well, Lucius is a bit cryptic, right? So he doesn't make things easy. Yeah. So, and he's got a bit of a mischievous sense of humor. So he's going to make you kind of work a little bit. He's saying that you're sending him the question well, but you're already kind of thinking too much. Like there's a filter as you're receiving.
Okay, got it. You mentioned vitamin C, and I just think that's funny because I woke up this morning with a bit of sore throat and potentially a cold. So I did take my vitamin C yesterday, and that begs the next question is, and I've heard about this with cats, and I'm not sure about with other animals, but I do know that cats and their frequency and their energy, they have a tendency to help heal their humans. And I'm just curious as to what kind of experience you've had with that.
Yeah, cats are pretty remarkable. During the pandemic, I was really lucky to have a cat staying with me. And I ended up calling her Boss Cat because she just was really very bossy. And there was several times when I was walking around saying, I am past my coping point. She would headbutt my leg and make her pay attention to her. And I really appreciate animals because I'll listen to them where I probably won't if it's a human. And she said to me, what are you doing? Because coping isn't a point. Like you are coping. Like you're coping in the moment. It's like ongoing. So there's no point you go past. You're just doing it. And every time you say you're past your coping point, you make yourself anxious. So just stop doing it. You are coping. And she swore a lot, but I can't do that on the podcast. She swore a lot. And then I kept walking around saying, why bother? And she finally said to me, you have to look up the opposite of bother. And I did, and it was soothe or calm. And so when I asked myself that question, I realized I needed to do something to comfort myself or soothe myself in that moment. And it really changed it into like the future is bleak to in this moment, I'll make a cup of tea or I'll sit down for a second or I'll do a bit of art or, pat the cat. I just find they're super helpful to us. And especially cats, they kind of can see where our humanness is just screwing us up, really, and how to be a bit more present with ourselves. Yeah, they're very extraordinary animals.
That's so beautiful. I love it.
They can really tell, especially dogs, like, oh, you need some help. I'm going to come over and, love you up right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then horses are really extraordinary with healing. They really just are so wonderful at that. I know I arrived one day, my first winter back in Canada. There was like a snowstorm that went on for days and days. And, in Hong Kong, it was maybe 25 Celsius, really beautiful weather. I got snowed in, went down finally to see Scully. They had been in the barn for, I think, a record days of 30 or something. And it was quiet down there. They were all just happily munching away. And I said to Scully, like, how are you guys like just so okay down here? Like, I've just been like stuck in my house going insane. And she said, yeah, you humans, that logic really drives you crazy. We have everything we need. Like, you're in that big house. You could have just enjoyed it. Yeah. So they're always giving me insight like that from my own life, really.
Gosh, it's such wisdom that, if everybody could hear that wisdom, I wonder if the world would just be a much better place,
Yeah. The cats once said to me, what if you treated yourself with as much kindness and thoughtfulness as you do to us? What would happen?
Are you looking for a new book to read? Because I know I always am. Head to Storytime in Paris on Paris Underground Radio with your host, Jennifer Garrity, as she interviews fascinating authors that have a French connection.
We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio.
We'll do anything for our animals and then put ourselves, way down the list. Lucius just wants to say, you're like the best human on the planet, and he loves you immensely.
Oh.
And he loves what you do, like going into the past and all those records and stuff. And he says that he's wondering if, I don't know if this is like, so my job, I don't really always understand what I get, but it often makes sense to the person I'm giving it to. He's just saying he's wondering if you can, I don't quite get it, Lucius. Do you want to send clarity there, bud? Yeah, I know. That's a Nova Scotian word I picked up. Yeah. Use the records for the future?
Okay.
I don't really understand, but he's saying that he loves what you do and it's really helpful. And it's really helpful to give you better understanding of who you are now. But he's wondering if sometimes you can close the file folders and really rub his head and be really present. And that somehow the records are kind of helpful for your future and creating it as well.
Okay.
But it's like he's saying it's difficult to walk down the street looking backwards all the time.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, good. That kind of described my job there where I get stuff and I have no idea really.
I mean, and it makes sense because given what I do for a living, which is helping people get over repeating patterns and looking into their past lives and into their past to be able to heal so they can move forward in better energies, that kind of thing. So dislodging those energies that no longer serve them, that sort of thing. So that's something I do on a pretty regular basis. So I find myself constantly doing that work on myself, right? So I'm always looking back at previous traumas to see how, those can be healed or how I can use that to, help a client or whatever it happens to be. Yeah, I do spend a lot of time looking to the past for healing. Yeah, I mean, it is good advice that I could actually look a little bit more towards the future and what I want to create in that manifestation energy, right?
And also the now.
Yeah.
Like it's true, all those things happened, but he's saying like today, now, you are who you are now as well. He's saying sometimes that past, when you keep delving into it, it explains things, but it doesn't, like you're missing the taste of something or the sight of something now. He's pretty clever, Lucius. He just wants to say, really his right side is the best for photographs. The right side? Yeah.
I can't wait to send you a photo of him when we're done with this interview. Like, you're going to totally laugh.
He's really funny because he wants to know, and this is funny that you have a cat, they always make their presence known, and I don't want to say they interfere, but they do interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's wondering if you're considering getting another cat.
Oh, I never thought to because I had another cat before.
He'd be okay.
Oh, really?
If you wanted to, he would have to approve, but it might be cool to have like a French cat.
Yeah.
He actually thinks what you need is a dog so that you can get out and have a reason to really walk every day, and that a dog would be great.
Uh-huh.
he's not 100% sure about that, but he will approve another dog or a bird.
Oh, interesting.
The one thing he misses about the States is the squirrels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have squirrels here.
Yeah, he really misses like those guys.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's why he kind of wants that terrace, because he misses that ability to just watch life go by. He spent a lot of time in the States doing that, just like watching out the window, like everything going by. And I feel like that's one thing that he misses, that kind of passing the day that way.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I am on the 11th floor. We do get birds, we get pigeons and things like that, but yeah, he doesn't have a clear view down to the street.
Yeah, or the other building. He's also saying he really likes that food. The food is really good.
Oh, I'm glad.
But he will say that he's really missing fresh water, like a puddle or something. And so he wouldn't mind if his like if he could just drink straight from the tap, or if he could have like his water, instead of topped up, like actually emptied and then refilled.
Oh, okay, got it. I have his water fountain as well, but he doesn't
He doesn't like.
he goes through phases where he'll use it and then he won't.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It makes a nice sound though. He likes the sound of it. He's just showing me that it's like it's not quite fresh, really.
The fountain, you mean?
Yeah, the fountain, but also the bowl. I think, yeah, he's done now. He's like, okay, cool, thanks.
That's awesome.
It was really funny at the beginning of COVID, before it started here in Nova Scotia. I was just like, oh, I've had it. I really want a regular paycheck. And I want to do something where I can like meet people. And so I went to this great job place where they help you with your resume. They teach you how to do interviews. I've always created my own job, so really helpful. And I saw there was a lot of gardening type jobs. I was like, I can do that. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in to interview with the lady, and I kept hearing this dog, And I explained to the lady what I did and why I really just wanted a job that I could go to, get paid, and not take it home with me. The dog kept saying to me, I'm really super allergic to my food and it's making me very ill.
Oh, no.
And so I was like, look, so sorry, but I'm trying to get this interview thing. I'm trying to work on a resume. Like, just please don't talk to me. But she was so insistent that I finally said to the lady, do you have a dog? And she was like, yes. And I was like, I don't know if she's eating a lot of chicken or something, but she's allergic to it and it's causing her to be like very extremely ill. And so she said she did, and the dog was ill, and she did eat chicken all day. So I got home and I was like, you guys are never going to let me have a normal job, are you? Ever?
No.
Like, you're just not going to let me go, are you? And everybody found it highly amusing, but I was so upset. I was like, like, honestly. And they were like, no, we've trained you too well. Like, you can't now.
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful gift that you have. And I can imagine that, it can get, energetically hard sometimes, like you said, when you were, going through the rough times with the elephants and things like that. So I can imagine that you do need you need a break sometimes, but yeah, I can't imagine they do that for you. It's so funny that you mentioned Lucius's food because I had another cat, just as a little backstory. So when Lucius was my previous cat, Monty, he passed away. And then within, I think 6 months, I got another cat. And so I had this other cat, Sadie. And then a couple years later, another cat popped up on my Facebook feed. Somebody had found a cat in the alley of their house. And I knew it was my previous cat, Monty. Like I knew. And so I was like, okay, I'm meant to have this cat. And so that was Lucius. And so I, took him in. Well, Lucius came in and was like, who's this other cat? Like, what is she doing here? He was like not thrilled with her. They never quite got along in I think it was almost 9 years that they were together before she passed away. And I had always given her food that was chicken flavored because she loved chicken. Of course I bought similar food for Lucius. So I always gave him the chicken food that I would give to Sadie. And it wasn't until I moved here to France that a vet gave me a sample for the food that was fish flavored or, that had fish in it. I gave it to him and he refused to ever eat the chicken food ever again. He was like, yeah, no, this is the food I like. So I think it's hilarious that that's what you mentioned about the food, because like his whole life I was feeding him chicken food and he's like, no, that's awful. Like I want the fish food. I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah, you see, in France, it's real food. Like it's actual real food. Yeah, it's delicious.
I'm so glad he likes it.
He is saying that he likes Sadie. She was cool, but she was a cat.
Okay.
Like she was a mere cat.
Uh-huh.
Like he's a Buddha.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He's such a handsome one, but may I say he's stubborn and arrogant as well. So,
yeah.
He had a bit of disdain. He has a bit of disdain for like cats.
Yeah. And that's why I was surprised that when you said that he would be okay if I had another cat, I was like, really? Because I don't know.
Well, he's not saying he's going to be best friends with the thing.
Right.
But he does think like a little sweet thing, like a really kind of affectionate one would be a bonus for you, because he does love you immensely, but he's not a super cuddler, And so he feels that like a little loving one, especially if it was a female, would be kind of nice to have. Like, it doesn't mean he's going to be like, when you bring her in, he's going to glare at you and like be like, what the F are you thinking?
Right.
But he just understands that it would be quite healing and beneficial for you to have like a really sweet little French cat.
Yeah. Cool.
And they do. That's the cool thing about animals is they often help their humans find them or find the one they need.
Yeah, that is true.
They really do that. So that's,
yeah.
And, there will be moments where he's like, you're a traitor. Like, what are you thinking? But at the same time, he is saying he's okay with it.
Okay.
He is suggesting you might want to have a glance around because there's a little female cat who would be very suitable for you both.
All right.
Yeah.
So now, do you have any pets currently?
No, I don't have any pets. I've always been a real traveler and, I grew up in Hong Kong, so I always was between Canada and Hong Kong and Thailand, Nepal, or wherever. And we always had a family dog. But this last trip, I came back from Hong Kong to check on my folks, really. And my dad was unwell, so I stayed longer. And then COVID hit, so I'm still here. And
right.
Yeah, I luckily had a cat who chose me, who just walked in the house one day and was like, yeah, I'm going to stay here for a while. I ended up cat sitting her.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't have any pets at the moment.
Whether you live in France or whether you're just trying to learn French, sometimes navigating the nuance of the vocabulary can be daunting. Navigating the French is a podcast that explores each one of these nuances that will help you integrate the language into your everyday vocabulary and help you understand the history of that word or concept. Emily Monaco is a delight to listen to. So head over to Paris Underground Radio, Navigating the French. We will be right back with The Heart of You after a word from our sponsors. Welcome back to The Heart of You on Paris Underground Radio.
So if you were to get a pet in the near future, What pet would you get, do you think?
Oh my goodness, I'd love a mini horse. I met a horse once at a show I was at. These people came in and they said, could you come out to the car and meet our horse? And I was like, your car? And they were like, yes, we just drove the horse down from Quebec. And I was like, the car though? What?
You're like, how big is your car?
Yeah, I was like, a car can't pull a trailer, So we got out and there was this little mini horse in the back seat or in the back of the SUV. And his name was Henry, and he was a seeing eye horse. And
wow.
I think he was the second batch they had trained, and he was trained to live in the house and help the man. And they started training little horses because they live so much longer than a dog. So, yeah. And after that, I was just like, oh my goodness, to have a mini horse would be so wonderful. Really, I feel like I would have no say in it, and the animal would just chose me like that cat did. Like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, deal with it.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
So last question, where would you recommend somebody get training in communicating with animals if this is something they want to do for a profession? Is that something that you do? Do you help people learn how to communicate, or is there some sort of program you're aware of that people can sort of go to? What would your advice be?
Like, let's take you, for example. You've got Lucius there, and you want to be able to communicate a bit better with them. And so it's a really good idea to use your intuition in your daily life and make it into a game. And like I used to, when I was driving long distances, play a game with myself, that person's going to turn off now. And then they would. And I'd be like, oh, look how good I am. Or, they didn't. But it was like a game. Or one of my students that I worked with, I started talking to him when he was like 10. And we would have a call every week. And he would send me a color. And I would tell him the color. And then I would send him a color. And we had it really narrowed down. Like there was only 3 colors we could send. Or it was like a square, triangle, or circle. So we just practiced like sending, receiving for hours together. Keep it really simple. As I said, like only ask yes or no questions when you start. Journaling really helps. Like if you just sit down every morning, you pick one word, you just go from that word, you write a half a page or 10 minutes worth. You never have to look at it again. It clears a space in your head, which gives you the ability to receive. Like there's space in there.
I'm a huge fan of writing things down. I tell people to do that constantly because, it does create that space.
And then you can have like write down what you receive too, because it might not make sense now, but it could in the future.
Yeah.
Also be really patient with yourself because, we are human and we have a lot of stuff in our head. And when we're talking to that animal at that time, they may be sending us the stuff, but maybe we're not receiving it clearly, but that's okay. So be really patient with yourself, but also the key is practice, practice, practice. That's really the key.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is because when you are working with human clients, you get that instant feedback. You get that feedback of, oh, yes, that resonates, or yes, that is true, or yes, that is happening. With a pet specifically, you're not getting that 3-dimensional verbal feedback, right? You would have to, I imagine, start cueing into the more subtle clues of behavior or body language or whatever it happens to be. So it would be a little bit more subtle, and you would have to pay a lot more attention, I would imagine.
Like you might ask Lucius something and he just doesn't, he's like shrugging, like, I'm not. Like, what? I'm asleep or I'm eating. Or, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we doubt it. We're like, oh, I didn't get anything, or like there's something wrong with me, or like we tend to overanalyze where you could just pause and go, okay, I didn't get anything. And that's not right or wrong or anything. It's just he didn't get anything.
Well, so I guess that it is safe to say that if you are wanting to start to learn how to communicate with animals, communicating with a cat like mine is probably not the best place to start.
Well, it's good to remember too, like people are amazed by my abilities, but I don't get any info. I don't get pictures. I don't get any info when I book people in. And that's because I figure if I saw a picture and I talk about the dog bed, I noticed it in the picture.
Right. Well, and exactly, like you didn't even know that I had a cat until we jumped on the call today.
Yeah, I prefer that because then I trust what I receive more. So the way that I do it is by long distance, and it's very specific. I get asked like a question from the client. I ask the animal, they give me what they need to give me. But if I'm standing like at the lake with a dog, I'm not having a huge conversation with them. And I often like don't get anything. And it's a lot more distracting. Like when I used to go to Barnes, I got so distracted by the people and what was happening around me. And, it's a lot more difficult. And when you're working with your own animal, you know them so well. But it really is trusting that you are doing it. And like one of my clients, I've worked with her cat Desi for years, and he used to just go off for a day, but he had to go across the highway. So a big discussion was like, that highway is dangerous, and working that out with them. And also when she called him to come back in for the night. And there was a lot of discussion around that. And he would say to her, well, send me a picture, of where it's okay for me to go.
Oh, interesting.
Or if you need me back, like send me a red ball. And, I spoke to him yesterday. They're having visitors and one involves a toddler. And he wanted to say to her, listen, if you get distracted and you see a red ball, that means you got to come find me because I'm having a meltdown and I need out. But she also, when she lets him out every day, sends him a really clear picture of his territory where he's allowed to go.
Oh, that's really great.
Yeah, so it's helpful for stuff like that.
Definitely. Wow, very cool. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to schedule a session for them and their pet?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.suburnett, SUBURNETT.com. And there's a contact form on there. Or a lot of people go to Facebook and approach me that way. I have a page. It's Su Burnett Animal Communication.
And so people can message you there as well to book a session?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been so enlightening, and oh gosh, I mean, I love what you do, and it's incredible. I could hear these stories all day long.
Yeah, it's good to really remember that everybody communicates with their animal. Like you're probably already doing it.
Yeah.
So just trust yourself. And I have to end with Leisha. She's like, don't try so hard. It's not hard. Like try easy.
Yeah.
Be easy. It's easy, he's saying. Gosh, he thinks you should write a book. Why aren't you writing that book? He thinks you should write a book, and he's not sure why you haven't written the book.
He thinks I should write a book?
Yeah, write the book, he's saying.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. All right, that's a first.
He's funny.
He just jumped up on my lap within the last 5 minutes or so. So he's hanging out here purring.
Yeah, he's a beauty, that one. He's gorgeous. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a joy. Just to give everybody out there some more information about Sue, if you want to go to her website, we will have her website link in the show notes as well. So if you would like to get a hold of Sue, you can definitely do it there. Again, if you would like to get a hold of me, I am at infinitesoullove.com and on all social media, infinitesoullove1111.
This episode of The Heart of You was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, please join us on Patreon.